welcome to this very special first edition of Murphy's Law. My name is Brendan Murphy, and I'm here to talk sports with you for the next hour or so. So if you'll do me that solid, be sure to stay tuned. It's going to be a lot of fun as we talk some baseball, talk some college football, NFL, and even a little golf sprinkled on here near the end. But first of all, I want to get going with introducing you to me a little bit because, well, it was the first episode. You don't really know me yet, so I'll introduce you to myself. My name is Brendan Murphy. I am a graduate of Marywood University. I attended there for the last 4 years, played baseball for a couple of years, played golf for a couple of years, met so many amazing people, and I studied sports broadcasting. So this is kind of the field that I am going to be heading into. So you kind of get a feel for what I'm about. I have played baseball my whole life up until the end of my sophomore year of college. Really enjoyed it. Never really thought it was boring, honestly. It was one of those things that I went out there, I played, I really enjoyed it. And that's why I really played for most of my life. As for football, I played, I think it was one game of Pee Wee football. And I think I might have been on the field for like 2 plays, and I had a loose tooth and was complaining that I didn't want to put the mouthpiece in, so the coach wouldn't let me in the game. So that was pretty entertaining. It was the only game I played. Then I quit because I just couldn't stand the running. I played soccer a couple of years, was never really that good at that. Thought that was kind of boring. Played basketball for a while. Had I kept playing into my junior and senior year of high school, I would have been on 2 district championship teams, which would have been pretty cool. But that's in the past, and I wish I could take that back, but that's okay. Got to play 4 years of high school baseball and golf. Got to college, played a lot of baseball. Wasn't playing a ton my first couple of years, which is part of the reason why I didn't play my junior and senior year. But I met a lot of people that are probably going to be lifelong friends. So it was really kind of cool. It was enjoyable, something I really loved doing. And after I stopped playing, I started covering the team for our newspaper, The Woodward. It was really a lot of fun. Wasn't as much fun as being on the field, but just being around the team always made me happy. Being around my friends, it was something that I always looked forward to. One little thing that I want to set straight before we get into anything, as I know it is a big topic in the world today, especially in the news and in sports, and politics are getting involved, a little too involved, if you ask me. But I'm going to set the record straight now so that we don't need to address it further down the road. My belief flat out is that politics don't belong in sports, because if you're anything like me, I watch sports to get away from politics. I know that when I come home, my dad has the news on every day, and it really bothers me. So I try to get away from that, and that's why I watch sports. And in the last few months, these athletes are doing it on the field, they're getting in social media, and it's just constantly in the news, and it's just something that drives me nuts. Whether you agree with it or not, whether I agree with it or not, it's neither here nor there. My personal feeling is it just doesn't belong in sports. I just want to watch sports to enjoy it. I want to watch baseball and only baseball. I want to watch football and only football. I don't want to see any of the political stuff that happens. And I get that it's your First Amendment right, freedom of speech, but neither here nor there. Just going to set the record straight now. We will not be talking any politics on this podcast. So even if it gets important, where you see stuff going on in the NFL or Major League Baseball, like it's a little political, I'm not going to talk about it. It is something that drives me nuts to even think about. So we're just not going to talk about it. We're going to be a strictly sports podcast, and I just needed to set that straight. So with that being said, let us move into our first talking point, which is college football. And we're really in week 4 now, actually. I was going to say week 3, but I'm looking at ESPN here and it says week 4 already. Just thinking about that's crazy, because only a couple of weeks ago, we didn't even know if we were going to have college football, with the Big Ten and the Pac-12 deciding not to play. Thankfully, though, both of those conferences have decided to play. And literally, as of about an hour ago, the Pac-12 decided they're going to be playing a 7-game football season starting November 6th. So that is going to be pretty cool. They're going to have a conference call tonight, which is Thursday the 24th is when I'm recording this. That is actually going on right now. Actually, it's about 8:40 Eastern time. So they are having that conference call right now, talking about their season. I don't know how it's going to affect the playoff. I would imagine that they're still going to be in consideration, but if you're playing a 7-game season starting on November 6th, you're only going to be finishing in the middle of December, which is right in the heart of bowl season. So I don't really know what their plan is, but the Big Ten's got it a little better. They're starting, I believe it's the middle of October, and they're going to run, I think, till the end of November into December. So they should still be in the playoff. I mean, you got to imagine Ohio State's going to be there. Penn State's going to be in contention. Wisconsin's going to be in contention. So there's a couple of schools in the Big Ten that could make a run at the playoff. But what we're going to focus on here is the ACC and the SEC. Now, I primarily follow the SEC, considering I'm a Florida Gators fan. Kind of weird, me being from the Northeast, being a Florida fan, but that was what, if you're watching on YouTube, that's the guy behind me here, Tim Tebow, got me into Florida football back when he was around and Florida was actually good. And I enjoyed watching it. And over the last couple of years, I've seen Dan Mullen come in and really turn this program around from what Jim McElwain had. And Felipe Franks had pretty much proven that he wasn't a starting quarterback on that team. He gets hurt last year. Granted, that's not the way Kyle Trask wants to take over with, I believe it was a broken ankle for Felipe. And Kyle Trask steps in and has a really good season and leads the Florida to a bowl win in the Orange Bowl over Virginia. And that was actually the first Florida game I got to go to. And let me tell you, going to a college game versus a pro game, the atmosphere is so much different. I don't really know how to describe it, especially because it was a bowl game, which made it really cool. But I got to see all sorts of fans decked out. I was actually in a bad part of the stadium. I got tickets right directly above the Virginia band. So that wasn't ideal. So I couldn't really hear the Florida band that well because they were on the other side of the stadium. But it was really an unbelievable experience. If you've never been to a college football game, I highly recommend it, especially if you're from in the Pennsylvania area. Go see Penn State. I got a bunch of friends who are big-time Penn State fans. They've told me that atmosphere at Beaver Stadium is unlike any other in sports. So I highly recommend going to a college football game. Granted, once we are actually able to get back to normal a little bit, and we all know with the COVID pandemic going on right now, we can't really go to live sporting events. So it'll be interesting to see how we come out of this and how fans are able to get back into the stands, because I know a lot of teams feed off the crowd. I mean, you see that in baseball. You see no fans in the stands. Certain teams feed off the crowd, and it kind of shows in their play on the field. But let's look into the SEC and what could happen for the college football playoff, because if you don't put the Big Ten in the playoff, you have to imagine you're going to see 2, maybe even 3 SEC teams, because I don't really see a Big 12 team coming out. I mean, Oklahoma's good. Oklahoma State's solid, but I don't really see either one of them being ahead of the 4 big kahunas in the SEC in Florida, Bama, Georgia, and LSU. I mean, you have the defending national champions, a New Year's Six Bowl winner, Alabama, who's always good, and Georgia, who was in the SEC title game last year. Can't really argue with that. But if you're looking at the SEC and what teams you could look to come into the playoff, you have to figure Alabama, because they just get better and better every single year. And they're actually not going to be rolling with their big time recruit in Bryce Young. And he's going to probably be the backup, because they're saying he's not quite ready to take over the starter's role. But got to give Mac Jones credit. He did a really good job stepping in for Tua last season when he went down with that dislocated hip. And I was really surprised and really intrigued to see how this Alabama team shapes up. I'm really hoping to see a Florida-Alabama SEC championship game. That would also require Florida beating Georgia, which they have not done either of the past 2 seasons. They've played them tough in Jacksonville. Got to give credit where credit's due. But it is kind of tough to play with a team that has that much experience with Jake Fromm at quarterback. That team was really good, but Fromm is in the NFL now, and Georgia's rolling with something new. I don't know. Florida's a team that a lot of experts are picking to go to the playoff. I'm not going to make my college football playoff picks now. That might be for next week or the week after or whatever the case may be. But we'll stick with that for now. I'm thinking we're going to see 2 SEC teams in the playoff, and Bama and Florida are very much in consideration. I mean, I didn't even mention Auburn. I mean, they got 5 teams in the top 10, with LSU at number 6, Auburn's at number 8, Florida's 5, Alabama, I believe, is number 1, if I'm not mistaken. And then Georgia, I believe, is number 4. So that is a pretty lofty class of teams in the top of the SEC. But as for the ACC, it's Clemson, and that's pretty much it. Although Notre Dame is playing in the ACC for this season, because mostly every conference is playing an in-conference schedule, and that is something that you have to keep in mind when you're scheduling games. And we all know Notre Dame can pretty much compete with any team in the country. So the fact that they're able to get into the ACC and play these big-time schools is pretty good. I mean, the ACC solid. You got Clemson, obviously. You got Miami is pretty good. You got North Carolina's been solid. Pitt's been good. Louisville's been good. They're a solid conference. You can't deny that. But I think it's basically going to come down to the 2 top teams in Clemson and Notre Dame. They're far and away the best teams in the conference. And it's going to be really interesting to see how that goes. I'm not really sure how they lined up the conferences in terms of the 2 divisions, but I'd have to imagine that they put Notre Dame in the opposite division, because Notre Dame Clemson ACC championship game, I would pay to see that. That would be a really, really good game. As for the Big 12, you have Oklahoma's up there. Oklahoma State's number 15. That's kind of it. I mean, Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma has coached back-to-back Heisman Trophy winners. So it will be incredibly interesting to see how they rebound this year. And they could make some noise going for the playoff. Like I said, I don't really see a Big 12 team getting there, but I think it would be Oklahoma if they do. I don't know. It's going to be really intriguing to watch. I'm just glad to have college football back. Finally, Florida's kicking off this week, so I'm glad to be able to watch the Gators at 12 o'clock on Saturday. And it's going to be really, really enjoyable to watch. Let's move along now into the NFL. And what a crazy week 2 it was. Injuries, and more injuries. What can I say? If you play fantasy football, chances are you probably lost somebody this week. And I lost 2 guys to ACL tears. Saquon Barkley and Cortland Sutton both went down with ACL tears this week. Christian McCaffrey is also going to be out a few weeks with a sprained ankle. Sterling Shepard for the Giants has turf toe. I've always tried to figure out what exactly turf toe is and how you get it. It's really kind of a strange little injury. And as for the Broncos, Drew Lock, he's out a few weeks with a sprained rotator cuff. And one of the weirdest injuries that we had was Tyrod Taylor for the Chargers had a couple of cracked ribs, so he was getting an injection to make it feel a little better. And the trainer or the doctor punctured his lung. So that's something that the Chargers are looking into and trying to figure out how it happened, why it happened. I don't know. That's really one of the stranger injuries that I have seen in the NFL in recent years. But you got to give Justin Herbert credit. He stepped in and really played his butt off against the Chiefs. I got to see the end of that game, and he had his team in position to win. That game went to overtime. And had they had a couple more things fall their way, they might have been able to win that game and steal it away from the Chiefs. I mean, that's a really good Chiefs team, the defending Super Bowl champions, and the Chargers played it tough. I mean, people were doubting the Chargers this year with Tyrod Taylor at quarterback, but I wouldn't. They're a solid team. I mean, I don't think they're going to win the AFC West, but they're definitely going to challenge some. They're going to definitely challenge the top teams with the Chiefs and the Raiders in that division. And boy, did I never think I'd say the Raiders are a top team in that division, but John Gruden's got that team doing really well right now. They're 2-0. They're going into New England this week. I don't know. It's going to be really interesting. They are going into New England. So when the Raiders usually come to the East Coast, it doesn't always go too well, especially now with Cam Newton solidifying himself back as a starting quarterback in the NFL. And boy, did he need a hot start for the Patriots. And I got to be honest, he went undrafted in my fantasy league. Picked him up right after week 1. I had Carson Wentz as my starting quarterback. I started Cam Newton last week. Boy, am I glad I made that decision. That was such a great move. Let's move on to the 49ers, who beat up on my Jets last week. They lost everybody. Jimmy Garoppolo's down with a high ankle sprain. Nick Bosa tore his ACL. Solomon Thomas tore his ACL. Tevin Coleman sprained his knee. Raheem Mostert went down with an injury. George Kittle has an MCL sprain. I mean, everybody's hurt on this team. I think the number was about 40% of their starters are hurt right now. It was so bad that they even had to go into MetLife Stadium and check the turf to see if it was safe. And it passed inspection twice. So luckily there's nothing wrong there. But they had some pretty rough injuries in that 49ers defense and even on offense. I mean, you lost your 2 best defensive players in Bosa and Solomon Thomas, 2 top picks in the last couple of years. That hurts. I mean, they're going to be playing the Giants this week with a depleted defense and a subpar offense. I mean, they're going to be running Jerick McKinnon as the running back. A lot of people are picking him up in fantasy to start him this week. But they're going in to play the Giants, who really didn't look that bad against the Bears last week. And I'm really kind of intrigued to see how that game goes. That could be a team that could sneak away with a win. Now, I don't think the Giants will win, but it could be a sneaky pick. It really could. Let's move on to the Eagles. What in the world is going on over there? They really blew up in week 1. And I think that might be an understatement because they lost to, who was it? They lost to the Washington football team. I really hope they come up with a name at some point because I'm getting kind of tired of calling them the football team. But that's what they are for the moment. They lost 27-17 and had a 17, I believe it was a 17-0 lead and blew it. I don't know if that's on the defense. I didn't get to watch the game. I saw highlights, and Dwayne Haskins did a pretty solid job in the second half to come back and beat the Eagles. As for last week, the Eagles took on the Rams, and Jared Goff kind of threw all over the Eagles defense. That was a pretty easy win for the Rams. Jared Goff looked pretty solid. I mean, the Rams are good. People forgot about them after what happened last year where they started to struggle a bit coming off the Super Bowl hangover, I guess. But they're still a good football team. That's what people honestly forget, that that team is very much capable of going back and making a deep playoff run. Between Jared Goff, you got a couple of really good young running backs, a couple of solid wide receivers, Cooper Kupp being one of them. I mean, and a pretty solid defense as well. So you can't be too upset if you're a Rams fan, especially opening up that gorgeous new stadium in Inglewood, California. Saw that on, I believe it was Sunday Night Football in week 1 when they played the Seahawks. Let me tell you, I would love to see a game there. That stadium is gorgeous. Let's move on to another team that has been surprising people, and that is the Jacksonville Jaguars. And boy, oh boy, this Jaguars team, they got some fight. Let's put it that way. They are, I wouldn't go as far as saying they're a good team, but I do think they are going to win some games, and they're going to surprise people. I mean, preseason, they're looking at the Jaguars to go 0-16 and take Trevor Lawrence in the draft. I mean, I don't really know why that would be the option, because when you have a young quarterback in Gardner Minshew who has done exceptionally well the last 2 seasons, especially completing his passes. He's completed 75% of his passes this year. So he's done a really good job of throwing the ball. Couple of picks, which happens. QB rating of 116, which is very good, above average. So I think that this Jaguars team can make some noise. I mean, like I said, not that good of a team. But if you look at their schedule, they're playing literally right now against the Dolphins. That's a pretty easy game. Then you have the Bengals, who definitely look better than they did a season ago with Joe Burrow at quarterback. The Texans have struggled so far to start the year. The Lions have been a little iffy. Then they got the Chargers as a good team. The Texans again. Then they play the Packers and Steelers, which are going to be 2 tough games for them. The Browns, who have looked okay so far. The Vikings haven't looked good. The Titans, who they played real tough in week 2. Then they got the Ravens, Bears, and Colts. I mean, the Ravens are one of the 2 best teams in the AFC. It's not even close. And actually, as I am looking at the top of ESPN, the Jaguars are down 14-0 to the Dolphins. So not so hot of a start for Doug Marrone's group down there in Jacksonville. As for my hometown team, arguably the worst team in football right now. And I don't really see that changing with the coaching staff. And that's the New York Jets. Adam Gase has got to go. Why he wasn't fired after last week is beyond me. I know Christopher Johnson gave him a vote of confidence, but come on. You're playing a 49ers team that literally lost everybody over the course of that game. They lost Bosa. They lost Jimmy G. They lost Mostert, who, by the way, on the first play from scrimmage had an 80-yard touchdown, which was not pretty, by the way. I wasn't even home yet. I was still in a car listening to the game. Opening kickoff, special teams does a good job, and then Mostert just books it through the line and gone. Actually, it was a pitch, if I remember correctly. And he was just gone. So, safe to say, not ideal. But bottom line is the coaching staff just did not have that team ready to play football. I really am questioning Adam Gase's play calling. I think that Adam Gase is not the offensive genius that they all said he was. He is no Sean McVay. He is no Doug Peterson. I don't even know why the Jets hired him in the first place. Last year, I was really pulling for Mike McCarthy, and now he's in Dallas. But what I have to say to that is you have a coach that literally said he will not interview for any other jobs besides the Jets job, and you don't hire him. And he's coached Aaron Rodgers. He's won a Super Bowl. What are you doing? But that's in the past. All I could say is Gase has got to go. And what you got to do for the rest of the season is if you go into the Colts come in and you get embarrassed again, you gotta get rid of them. I mean, you're going into Indianapolis, who is not really that good a football team. Phillip Rivers looks old. Not really sure why he's still a starting quarterback. I mean, the dude's probably a Hall of Famer, but has no business playing in the NFL anymore. If you go into Indianapolis and get embarrassed, that's it. That you have to pull the plug. I don't know what more they need to see to pull the plug after that. And one other thing I'll say about the Jets before I move on. People really need to stop criticizing Sam Darnold. Week 1, okay, he didn't play well. But week 2, he played okay. They didn't let him do anything. So he was kind of stuck. He had a solid game last week. He only has one interception. Had a ridiculous touchdown pass. Now, granted, it was in garbage time, but made a really nice play to get away from a sack and turn it into a touchdown. Made the throw across his body on the run. That's what Sam Darnold can do. That's why the Jets took him 3rd overall. I'm not ready to give up on him. I think he's been fine. I think Gase has really stunted his development. I think he took a huge step forward at the end of last season, but took a massive step backwards this season so far. And I think Adam Gase is the reason. So I think all you got to do, fire Gase, let Greg Williams coach the team. He did well with the Browns after they got rid of Hugh Jackson in Baker's rookie year. So I don't know why you would hold on to him at this point. Let's run quickly down the schedule for this week and make some picks. We're not going to do the Thursday night game because that's going on right now. Bears and Falcons. I'm going to take the Bears. Mitchell Trubisky, as much as I love to hate on him, has been a solid job for the Bears this year. I like their chances going into Atlanta. Rams and Bills, it's going to be a pretty darn good game. I like Buffalo, though. Josh Allen has really showed me that he's an elite quarterback, or he's going to be an elite quarterback. So I'm going to take the Bills. Cleveland and Washington, I'm taking the Browns. You don't really need much of an explanation there. Washington's just not good. Tennessee and Minnesota, give me the Titans. I like what they've done in the run game, just as what they did getting too deep into the postseason last year. Raiders, Patriots, I think that's going to be another pretty good game. I do think the Raiders have been playing a little bit over their head right now, so I will take Patriots, Giants, and Niners. I might have foreshadowed this a little earlier about the Giants. I'm going to mix it up, and I'm going to take the Giants. I think the Niners are hurt, and they're going to be starting Nick Mullins at quarterback. Anything can happen. I mean, Nick Mullins played okay when Jimmy Garoppolo was hurt. I think it was 2 years ago. But I don't know. I like the Giants here. I think they just signed Devontae Freeman to be the running back now with Saquon out for the year. I don't know. I don't think they're going to win, but I'm going to make that pick just because I feel okay about it. Bengals, Eagles, I like Joe Burrow. I like what he's done so far. I'm going to take the Bengals. The Eagles really have not looked good. It almost seems like they're trying not to throw Zach Ertz the football and making Dallas Goedert the top tight end. Been kind of an issue for them this year. Give me the Bengals. Steelers at Texans. The Texans really have not looked that good this year. You can really tell that DeAndre Hopkins made a difference for Deshaun Watson. I like the Steelers. They've played well. James Conner's running the football well. That Steelers defense is elite. Probably the best defense in the NFL. Give me the Steelers. Jets, Colts. Colts. Do I even have to give an explanation? I'm not going to. Chargers, Panthers. I like the Chargers here. I think they played really well against the Chiefs. And Justin Herbert is starting again with Tyrod still on the sidelines. I think he's going to do more to help his chances of becoming the starting quarterback officially. So I like the Chargers there. Bucks and Broncos. I like the Bucks big time. The Broncos are hurt without Drew Lock. They just lost Cortland Sutton for the year. And I think Tom Brady and the Bucks, still weird saying that Tom Brady and the Bucks, not the Patriots. But I think Tom Brady's going to go in. He's going to have a solid game, and they're going to win. Detroit and Arizona, Kyler Murray has looked really good this year with DeAndre Hopkins at wide receiver. I'm taking the Cardinals. Seattle and Dallas. Cowboys have been okay. They came back from a big deficit last week to win. And Dak Prescott has looked pretty darn good. I still love to hate on him, but you got to give Dallas credit. But I am going to take the Seahawks. They dominated the Patriots last week. And I love Russell Wilson, what he's done so far this season, really looking like an MVP frontrunner right now. Packers and Saints on Sunday Night Football. Drew Brees kind of looks like he's struggled a bit this season. Seems like he's taken a little bit of a step back. Michael Thomas is also still not playing. So I like the Packers there on Sunday night. And the Monday night game, Chiefs and Ravens, probably going to be the best game of the week, one of the best games of the season, and probably a preview of the AFC Championship game. I think the Chiefs going into Baltimore, granted no crowd, so there's not that much of a home field advantage. I think they kind of got outplayed last week against the Chargers and were able to squeak away with a victory, but I don't know. I still think this Chiefs team is really good, but I like the Ravens in this one. I love to hate on Lamar Jackson because I honestly think he's a poor man than Michael Vick, but got to give credit where credit's due. He won an MVP last year, and he's doing it all again this year. So I'm going to take the Ravens. So that'll wrap up the NFL. We're going to take a quick break here, but when we come back, I welcome one of my good friends, former teammates, and podcaster in his own right to the show, Trevor Powers. Spent a couple of years at Marywood with him. Now he is an assistant coach at Goldey Beacom. And we're going to talk some baseball coming up. We have a lot to talk about. Some breakout players, awards predictions, looking ahead towards the postseason and maybe even into free agency. A little sneak peek of what we could expect in the winter. So when we come back, we will welcome Trevor to the show here on Murphy's Law. Keep it here. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this week's episode of Murphy's Law. If you're enjoying the show, please be sure to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a review while you're at it. It would really help the podcast grow, and I would really appreciate it. Also, be sure to check out our YouTube page where you can check out the video versions of the podcast each week. If you ever have a question or just want to talk sports, feel free to message me on Twitter at B_Murphy_MU. Now let's get back into the show. Welcome back here to Murphy's Law. I am joined now by my good friend Trevor Powers. Trevor is a former baseball player at Marywood and also played for a year at Goldey Beacom. He is now a graduate assistant coach at Goldey, as well as a podcast host himself. Mm-hmm. He and Dan Galati from Goldey Beacom started up a podcast earlier this summer called Backside Groundballs. So, Trevor, welcome to the show. And if you would, go ahead and talk a little bit about your podcast and what viewers from here could expect from you.
Yeah, so the podcast, if you notice, there probably won't be any episodes the past couple of weeks. Well, it's on the temporary IL. Being an unpaid college assistant coach means you're either working a part-time job or recruiting like me and Galati both do, but we're hoping over the next couple of weeks we'll get back on it. But basically what we try to do is we're both big MLB fans as well as college baseball coaches, so we're passionate about the player development side, and I think we give a real world explanation of what we feel of player development. So we talk about everything from prospects to practice, mental game, but we also talk about the MLB side of the game. So it kind of just brings both the worlds of maybe the stuff that goes on behind the scenes on the backfields of the spring training complex that people might not see, and we try to translate on why it's coming out on the field. And I think that's what we do really unique in our podcast.
If you haven't checked out their podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, Backside Groundballs, I think it's like 18 episodes out, something like that?
We're at 18. Yeah, I mean, we got rolling for a little bit there through there's some really good draft stuff. If you didn't know anything about the draft, I think that was 2 pretty good episodes. We had a couple preview episodes, which obviously mean nothing now, but then just some pretty good conversation about where baseball's heading, college baseball, where that future's headed. If you're interested in some of the stuff that might be implemented after this COVID stuff. So, that might be needed. So if you're interested in that side of things, I think it's got a lot of information in it.
And it definitely does. Now, you're a big PD guy, player development. I know pretty much every time we talk, I learned something new. Even the last week we had one of our famous text debates about Edwin Diaz and how I still don't trust him.
Made it tricky tonight, didn't he? He made it.
He did. He made it interesting, but he got the save. Yeah. Not complaining. Did give up a run, but honestly, I didn't get to see the end of the game because we were recording the first part of the podcast. But I saw the highlights in between when we were on break and to now. But hey, I can't really complain too much. You convinced me. You convinced me to give him more of a chance. I knew the numbers were good, but I needed a little convincing, and you definitely helped me out there. But we're going to start off with some surprising breakouts and disappointments for 2020. We'll start with breakouts. We each did 3, so we'll go one by one. Trevor, who's your first breakout star from this season?
My first one, he's not really going to seem like much of a breakout to a lot of people, but the step forward that he took. So you probably ask yourself, how does an all-star game MVP a breakout? But Shane Bieber, what he's done this year, last year he was kind of like a command guy. threw a lot of strikes, all that stuff. Now he's like an elite strikeout guy. I mean, he's like Jacob deGrom Jr. except younger, and he's putting up pretty much identical numbers with swing and miss and everything. It's really mind blowing what he's done this year in the shortened season.
Yeah, Shane Bieber came out, I think, 13 and 14 strikeouts in his first two starts, I believe.
Unbelievable.
Now, granted, there's been debates all season about the AL Central and NL Central being weak competition, but I was looking at a Trevor Bauer conversation on Twitter. It doesn't even matter. Like
Yeah,
when you
no,
go
they're
out
big
there and
leaguers.
shove, they're still big leaguers. Exactly. So when you go out there and shove the way he's been, you deserve every bit of credit in the world. My first guy, now I tried to go the route of actual breakouts. Now, I love the Shane Bieber pick. Good pitcher, but took it to a whole new level this year. I went with one guy who's going to be in the running for National League Rookie of the Year. The reason I put him here is because he's not my pick, and it's Jake Cronenworth. Now, he was a guy – now, I know you're big into prospects, so you probably knew who he was. I'll be honest, before I heard his name on Fantasy Baseball Today, CBS podcast, if you're a fantasy baseball player, definitely check it out. It helped me this year. But when I heard his name, I'm just like, who is this guy? I mean, he's a guy. He doesn't hit for a ton of power. He doesn't steal a ton of bags, but he's a scrappy player, and that's kind of you can kind of relate him to maybe the way Jeff McNeil was when he first came up in his rookie year, where he's getting hits to the opposite field. He's being a pest on the bases and really just doing everything you can ask for from a big league player. And he's not going to be the guy who's going to hit you 35 homers. He's probably, he's got 10, 15 homer power, but he can run into one once in a while, but he's a scrappy player, plays good defense, has played all over the field for the Padres this year and has done an outstanding job for that team and really has been a key piece to that team that's going to be making a run in the postseason this year.
Yeah, I love that pick so much that he was my second breakout guy. You said it. He's just a good baseball player. He really is. He went to the University of Michigan, so he's an older guy, older draft guy. The only reason I knew who he was is because he was sent with Tommy Pham. I believe he was sent in the deal this offseason.
From the
And he was
Rays.
popular. Yeah, so he was popular because he was a two-way guy. So he's also a pitcher.
No
And
wonder why he was so good. He came from the Rays.
yeah, exactly. Well, two just model organizations, to be honest with you. But he's just a stud and fits perfectly in that lineup. And the one thing I'll say is I think you're not giving him enough credit on the juice. If you go look at his baseball savant numbers, which I love that website. It's saved on my phone. Every time I open up my internet, it's right there. I click on it. And if anybody's a baseball fan and you're not familiar, just go check it out. But he's actually like top 1% exit velo, top 1% barrel rate. He's around 90, little over 90 on average exit velo, a lot of balls in the air. So I think he's actually going to grow into like 20 pop, homer pop, maybe even 25 for not a big guy. But if the balls are still a little inflated in this game that, we're kind of seeing it would not surprise me one bit if he hit 25 over 162 and you just be like, wow, this guy's just really good. But yeah, he came out of nowhere for a lot of people. He wasn't on my radar before the year. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the power can be there. He's still young. He's going to grow into his body. So kind of
Doubles
have to see what
power
happens there.
becomes homer power over time. I always say it. So
You're
he's got a lot of
famous.
doubles.
You're famous for that line.
I love that line.
I can vouch. I can vouch for that very much so. My next guy is a guy who is a former top prospect. He really didn't get a whole lot of playing time the last couple of years because he was kind of – there were guys in front of him that were good major leaguers but didn't necessarily belong playing over him, and that's Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker is a guy who people started to forget about. And when we did our new startup draft for Dynasty Baseball, I wanted Kyle Tucker because I knew Josh Reddick was nearing the end of the line in Houston. And I don't know, maybe the trash cans might have helped him. But I think Kyle Tucker's really done well this year. Just pulling up his numbers real quick. I mean, he's a guy that's got good pop, good solid speed. He's got, let's see, 9 homers, 42 RBIs, 33 runs, 7 steals. Only batting 268, and his OPS is 850, which is still a very respectable number. And on a team that's got some good players, granted, you don't know who's still good. Altuve was bad this year. Springer didn't have a very good year. Bregman was okay, but he's really stood out and has started to come into his own. We know he had that power. He put, I want to say it was 35 homer power in the minor leagues. I could be wrong.
I think he was 30.
Yeah, it was a lot, and he's got good speed. So he's the type of guy that I finally broke out, and I think he's going to be a stalwart in that Astros lineup for a long time.
Yeah, I agree. Dusty Baker's known for not playing the young guys, but I'm glad that he finally turned the corner and gave Tucker free reign to go out there and be himself and grow, and grit his teeth in the big leagues, because it's not easy to play in the big leagues. Ultimately, I mean, a lot of guys burn out, and he's really come out. He's really been great this year. It's been unbelievable.
That was one of my favorite picks from that league.
Yeah, that was a good one.
I'm definitely going to do my best to get him in the offseason in our other league too.
Yeah.
So who's your third guy?
So my third guy is a guy that a lot of people were talking about coming into the season as an under the radar guy. If we want to talk about fantasy, I was familiar with his outings before the season when they were playing inter-squad games as Corbin Burns. So I knew he was shoving it in the beginning of the season before the season started. A lot of people were talking about it. I said, I'll take a flyer on him. If he's bad, I'll drop him. If he's good, he's good. You know what I'm saying? One of those things. So at this time, obviously, I think he got roughed up today as we record. But at the time of before the game, he was pitching to a 1.77 ERA with a 1.79 fielding independent pitching. So pretty much tells you that he's been about on par with what he's expected to be. And he's striking out 13 per 9. So, we're
That's
starting
really
to look
good.
at a guy that if he carries that over, I mean, it's only 8 starts, 59 innings, but if that carries over 162, we're talking about top of the line rotation guy.
Oh, yeah. And in that Milwaukee rotation where it seems like nobody can pitch in recent years, that was a heck of a find for them.
Mm-hmm.
My third guy is a hometown guy, and it has nothing necessarily to do with the fact that he's on the Mets. He utterly deserves a breakout tag, and it's Dominic Smith. I mean, he's the type of guy last year. Well, actually, his rookie year when he came up, he hit like a $140 or $180 or whatever it was, and was overweight, struggled mightily in the big leagues. The next year wasn't that much better, but last year he seemed like he was starting to take a step forward. The Mets decided to throw him out in the outfield, and it was tough out there, but he's really started to figure it out. He played a couple of games in the outfield in the Rays series and actually looked pretty decent out there. He made a couple of nice sliding catches. He made a nice relay on a ball hit down the line that he got it in quick and held the runner to third base where he easily could have scored. And he's hitting the cover off the ball. He's leading the Mets in RBIs. I think he's 5th or 6th in slugging percentage in the National League. His OPS is over 1,000, 10 home runs. He's batting 320. I mean, what else can you say? I mean, he's come into his own. He's basically proving why he was a first-round pick. And he's honestly kind of taken the first base job almost away from Pete Alonso. And if I said that 5 months ago that Pete Alonso might not be the starting first baseman at the end of the season, he might have looked at me like I was crazy. But especially with the year he had last year. But Dom Smith is obviously a much better defensive first baseman and has hit the cover off the ball this year and has driven in runs in huge spots for the Mets this year. So I had to show Dom some love, especially because I got 2 shares of him in Dynasty. And one of the leagues I picked him up off of free agency, and the other one I traded David Peterson for him. So I think I did pretty well there.
Yeah, I remember seeing Dom Smith hit it was a couple weeks ago, and I'm mistaken him. Like he got into a lot better shape. Let's just put it that way.
Oh yeah,
he looks like he has the build that looks like it's athletic enough to play in the outfit. Obviously, foot speed and things come into play there, but he definitely took pride in his off season, and he came in ready to play, and he's unbelievable with the bat.
And that's why he was a first round pick. Honestly, he really did his thing. Now moving into some disappointments, I'll go first for this one. I don't think this first one's really much of a surprise, and it's going to be Gary Sanchez. He has been horrible for the Yankees
really
this
a
year.
Disappointment anymore? Isn't that what he does?
I don't know. I mean, he was still decent last year. He was probably still a top 5 catcher last year, and this year he might not. He's not even their starter at this point anymore. I mean, he's still got the power, but he's basically either hitting a home run or he's striking out. That's essentially what he's been this year. He's batting under 150. His OPS plus is 68, which league average is 100, and that could just tell you how bad that is. And not only that, he seems to have gotten worse defensively, and I didn't think that was possible with him. It is not pretty, and I think that it might be time for the Yankees to look him in the eye and say, look, you got to either get better or we're going to get rid of you. It's plain and simple.
He had a really good year last year.
Yeah.
He had 34 homers in 106 games. I didn't know he was playing that bad. Yeah, I know his pitch framing numbers were better, but
that's about the only thing he's done better this year.
He could never block.
Even that got worse, and I didn't think that was possible.
My biggest disappointment is just somebody that so for people that aren't familiar, I'm the leader of the Joey Gallo for MVP fan club. And, he struggled a little bit. He just did – again, you have to take it with a grain of salt. 60-game seasons, you're going to see a lot of streaky power hitters. You're going to see guys that go off and like Luke Voigt and do what they did for 60 games. And if they played 162, they'd come back down to earth. But you also have the guys that take a while to get their timing down and things like that. And I would just assume Joey Gallo is one of them. Gary Sanchez is probably one of them too. I mean, I'm not a Gary Sanchez fan, but he's not that bad. He's somewhere in between what he was his rookie year and what he, was this year. So, Joey Gallo is just more of a disappointment for me personally. I am a big fan. I love him, and I'm always supporting him. And I'll be back next year on the Joey Gallo for MVP train at the beginning of the year.
So I take it that you won't be fielding offers for him in Dynasty?
No, because I'll just get lowballed like some low minor leaguer for Joey Gallo.
Oh, I wouldn't have said that low.
Somebody's gonna quote like, "Oh, but he hits 180." I'll be like, "Yeah, but he hits 40 bombs." And it's the big leagues. There's a reason. Hey, all I'm going to say is, who's last in the league in batting average? Me. You know who's still playing meaningful games? Me. So I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, are you beating Cordelli right now?
Right now I'm down. Yeah. His pitching's going off today, so it's 5-4-1, and he has the tiebreaker, so I got to play.
You just tied a category, actually. I don't know which one, but you just tied one. Because I got 5-3-2 on mine. But it's championship week, so I mean,
Yeah, it's close. I just need somebody to get hot. I need a good day out of the team. Both our teams are just like all pitching right now, and our lineups are kind of
well,
scuffling through.
did your pitchers like throw everything last week? Like, did you get a
No, I'm
lot
still
of 2-start
rolling.
guys last week?
Yeah, I got a lot of two. Oh, I had a ton of. So it actually worked out when I played Johnny first week. I had Dinelson Lamet in the 2-start. Well, they got canceled on Sunday, and guess what happened? He got pushed to Monday when I already clinched. I was like, dude, it's almost like I'm out here playing Puppet Master and pushing my starts back. So then he gave me a 2-start week last week, and then so I might get one more 2-start week this week. And again, we'll talk about him later on why I might get a 2-start week out of him and why that's important.
Yeah, we'll get into some fantasy talk later. We're both pretty big into dynasty fantasy baseball. We've done it the last 2 seasons, and it's been a lot of fun. My next guy, he was an all-star last year, part of one of the most infamous trades in the history of the Pittsburgh Pirates, and it's Austin Meadows. He's really struggled with the bat this year. I mean, not as bad as other guys. Like, I tried to stay away from the Cody Bellingers and the Christian Yelich's because with those guys, it's just a fluke. I mean,
Yeah, short season.
It's just slow starts. They're back. They're the 2 reigning MVPs in the National League. I'm not worried about them. Austin Meadows is a little scary right now. I mean, he's a guy who came up with the Pirates before he was traded. He hit really well. And he gets traded over to the Rays, and he has an all-star year last year. He breaks out and took a big step back this year. But, I mean, the Rays are a good team. I'm not that worried about them. I honestly think this could be a fluke. But, I mean, from a pure baseball standpoint, it's a little disappointing for him. He's batting – he's just above the Mendoza line. He's hitting 205, 667 OPS. 4 homers, 86 OPS plus. Not terrible numbers, but still not that good. And I do expect him to bounce back next year, but it was a tough year for Austin Meadows.
Yeah, did he have COVID problems?
I think he might have early.
Yeah, I thought he did. I mean, because I know that's something like Moncada has talked about is like he said he's just exhausted, and I for the guy, and Moncada also test positive for COVID and had the illness, which again you see Freddie Freeman out there doing what Freddie Freeman's doing, and he apparently had it the worst out of everybody. But there's probably some truth to the fact that Moncada's struggling and he's a talented guy, and same with Meadows is just
Meadows did have it, by the way.
Yeah, so like I don't know if there's some truth to that.
Yeah,
but
that's
from
part
what
of the
I'm hearing,
reason why I think it's a fluke.
Yeah, there's multiple guys. I forget who on the Phillies had it. I think it was Kingery.
I think it was, yeah.
Kingery
and he's struggling a little bit this year.
Yeah, he's struggling too. It's like not everybody can be Freddie Free. I'm convinced Freddie Free could roll out of bed, hit me 330 if he wanted to. But
I mean, you know what he said. He was I think it was when he was on first base with Pete Alonso because he's been doing this mic'd up thing this year. Mm-hmm. And I think he said to Pete that at one point, like, he was afraid that he might die from COVID. Yeah. He had like 104 fever and he just couldn't move. And thank God for him. He's better healthy. And he's playing probably have the best season of his career.
Yeah, definitely. So for my second disappointment, like, I mean, I'm kicking them while they're down, but like the superstars with the Astros, just Bregman, Altuve, Springer.
As a whole, I guess.
As a whole, yeah. I mean, really just the superstars, because I get it. I don't think they're that bad. Like, I don't think the trash can help them. I don't think they're as bad as they played this year, but you can tell they're just, I think, more mentally fatigued is the way to go with just the off season they had. And, they came out, they wanted to prove something and everything like that. And they've just come out and they've struggled. And, put your money where your mouth is. They all said they were going to be out defending a championship and doing whatever, but they haven't showed up. And obviously JV going down and things like
That
that
hurt
are
'em.
obviously weren't in their favor. But it's the superstars did not show up this year one bit.
I will say, though, when I was going over my preseason rankings that I wrote for Marywood on the Woodward, I had said that I don't think the Astros will make the playoffs. Now, granted, expanded format, they're making it, most likely, unless something crazy happens with the Angels. But I did say that I didn't think Houston would make the playoffs. I kind of hit on that one. They are going to
But
make the
who did you
playoffs,
have
but
winning the division?
all right, I had the Angels winning the division. I had Shohei as my MVP.
I know, but I'm gonna fact check you here, and we're gonna get the whole story out. It's easy to say
wrong.
you did. Yeah, I'm not gonna let me go out and just say that. Like, come on.
Absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. I that one hurts, but I think it cancels out with the fact that I was right about Houston, that they weren't.
Yeah, that's fair.
I do think they would have been better if Verlander wasn't hurt.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know how much better it would have been.
They kind of settled in nicely at the midway point and started playing really good baseball. But
they started cold, got hot, and then kind of cooled off again.
Losing JV just has to take the wind out of your sails, though. I mean, especially letting Cole walk, full well knowing that, like, okay, we got Verlander and Greinke for the next 3, our big money pitchers, and
old big money pitchers.
Yeah, JV goes down. What did he even get a start? He got 1 start.
He started on opening day, I think. I think he actually pitched well on opening day, and then has the nerve. What was it? The nerve issue in his neck or something like that, and then
it was all elbow. I was convinced. Me and Colin Palouse were texting back and forth. I sent him a screenshot, and I was like, he needs Tommy John, and we were just talking about it. That was the original when he first went down, and what our thought process was. He's got 2 more years left on his contract. I think he pushed for, let's rehab it. Let's see if I can go. I'll pitch through some pain with a torn UCL if I can still get it up, still get the velo, still get the stuff moving around that I can. So I think he tried to rehab like a fully blown UCL or partially torn UCL. And I think once he tried to make his rehab start, it probably didn't recover well. And that when he was like, maybe I do have a couple more years left on my body, so let's go get the surgery and come back down the road. So I'm convinced it's always been a torn UCL. It's just was a matter of him deciding at his age to get the surgery.
Yeah, I mean, he's coming off a Cy Young year, so if I'm him, I'm thinking
he shouldn't have won.
The same thing. Yeah,
that he should not have won.
Now, don't get me wrong. If it wasn't if Cole was not existing, he would have won it.
Yeah.
But Cole deserved that Cy Young last year.
He didn't lose after May.
Yeah.
Until the World Series.
Mm-hmm. Although you can say, though, that maybe this was forgive me for not giving him the Cy Young the year Porcello won it.
Yeah, but that's BS that you're
Cole. But Cole
Garrett
deserved it.
Cole does
he deserved the Cy Young.
He did. I was very surprised when I found out that Justin Verlander won. Very surprised.
Mm-hmm. My third disappointment, I was really trying to find somebody other than him, but I really couldn't think of anybody better to talk about considering I've watched this guy for 60 games. And it's Pete Alonso, and it's not so much for the lack of hitting so much as it is for it just seems like he's just mentally in a funk. He goes out there and he's really he seems like one of the most down to earth, fun, cool guys in the world, and he's just struggling this year. And Jeff McNeil is the same way at the beginning of the year, but he figured it out. I mean, Pete's had some games where he's still hitting his homers. He's still got, I think, 13 homers on the year. And last night, I think he hit one out to right center, which told me that he might be coming back, but might be too little
At
too
game
late.
58.
Yeah, might be too little too late. But he made a little bit of a swing adjustment that Keith Hernandez was pointing out on the broadcast a couple times, where he had more of a hitch with his hands in his swing this year than he had last year. And it was just a little subtle thing. And it seemed like at the very beginning of the year, his timing was all off. And he was getting blown away by fastballs that were really only like 94, 95. And he was chasing. He was getting behind in the count early, getting really frustrated. And I really think that's all it is with him. He's getting frustrated. And I think having Dom Smith come out and have a really good year might have played into that.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for timing issues turning into mental issues. So if a young guy who has high expectations, a lot of times something, especially for power hitters, you hear me talk about it all the time, power hitters are streaky. They're all timing-based hitters. If you think about it, with a 60-game season, the pressure that comes with a tough 10-game stretch to start the year, coming off a Rookie of the Year, is like a lot different in a 162 compared to 60. So I think for a guy who puts a lot of pressure on himself and is a very driven player like Pete Alonso is, I think that I'm sure it was just his timing was off, and then it got mental. And then that's when you see the guys chasing because he's trying to do too much. And then you see Dom Smith doing his thing. And it was a combination of things. But somebody else mentioned on the MLB Network the other day, who else in the MLB could be more affected by not having fans? You see two guys struggling. I think Pete Alonso and Javi Baez that like feed off the energy of interacting with the fans and being the show per se. You know, it's the big leagues. Like it's one thing to play on a backfield and perform, but are you able to do it in front of 40,000 people? And I think Pete Alonso is one of those guys that like the spotlight. He's not a quiet guy. He's very outspoken. He's very energetic. You know, maybe he feeds off the New York fan base and things like that. So there's a lot of things that go into it. I wouldn't write him off.
Oh, God, no.
By any means.
No.
And he's still going to be a stud. And even if he doesn't hit for the average that he hit for last year, which, you know, is a lot to ask for a guy hitting 50 bombs. You know, if he gets 220 with 50 bombs, like you just take it for what it is. That's a good baseball player.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't complain about that one bit.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, if the DH is here to stay, I think you should probably consider moving him to DH, considering how much better Dom Smith is at first base, and he's proven that he belongs in the big leagues. And I mean, there was talk in the offseason last year that they may trade him, and thank God they didn't because he had a great year.
But, especially with the DH coming.
Exactly.
People didn't think the DH was going to come.
Mm-hmm. Who's your last guy?
My last guy is a group of guys, and it's just I'm going to go homer with you. It's the Nationals, and you know I'm not going to complain, but when I had to think about a disappointment, you know, I just wish the boys showed out better. But they were exhausted.
Yeah,
they're probably still hungover. It's nothing to go home about. You know, if they make a contender next year, whatever, I'm fine. But yeah, they were kind of disappointed. There were times where I was, you know, slamming my fist up against the wall, frustrated watching the game, and you know, but.
I mean, you get high expectations coming off that World
Flags
Series.
fly forever, though. You know, that's what they say.
Exactly.
Aroldis Chapman for Gleyber Torres. Flags fly forever.
Exactly. I mean, Cubs would probably do that trade again in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
Both teams won on that trade. I don't think either team's complaining. Let's move on to awards. I know took us a little long to get through those, but we'll move into some awards. And before we do that, I'm going to go back and look at my awards predictions. Now, this article is on the Woodward. It came out July 23rd, which was opening day. Now, I can go through the championships and like the playoffs and everything, but I'll just go through awards for now. There was only one that I think even was remotely close, and that is one of the rookies of the year. But we'll start with manager of the year. I picked David Bell from the Reds. Now, the Reds have been making a run in the last couple of weeks, the last week or so, and they're probably going to make the playoffs, I'm thinking. But I don't think he's going to win Manager of the Year, especially with the other couple of teams in the National League that could deserve it. American League, I had Joe Madden because I expected the Angels to be good. We all know what happened there. Rookies of the Year, I had Gavin Lux in the National League, who has barely played this year for the Dodgers, which is kind of a shame. He's kind of in that Kyle Tucker debacle, where he's kind of just doesn't have a place to play right now.
Tough being a top prospect on a playoff team, because they got to go sign a second baseman that's a guarantee, or they already have Max Muncy there, or whatever's going on, and you're just a guy trying to make a big league minimum. So like you could be all talent in the world, but they don't have the time to worry about you. And Gavin Lux just seems to be, he's a shortstop by nature, and they have one of the best in the MLB. And then Max Muncy at second, and Justin Turner at third, and Bellinger, Peterson rotation at first that they got David Freese. So it's just tough.
Yeah, American League was the one that I'm at least close on. I personally didn't pick him to win it, but Louis Robert, he's really kind of struggled a bit lately. But you got to admit, he inked a big contract and he came out swinging. He played pretty well this year, did a solid job. It's going to be big for that White Sox team going forward. Cy Youngs, I had Jack Flaherty in the National League. I was really expecting him to have a bigger year than he had last year.
COVID ruined him.
Yeah, honestly. That I was about to say that. I think his numbers post-COVID were good, not great, but still he's the type of guy that's going to win one of these days. I had Jack Flaherty. American League is a guy who isn't even in the American League anymore, Mike Clevenger. He would still be on the Indians if it wasn't for him and Plesac deciding to go out and getting themselves in trouble. So I firmly believe he would still be on the Indians if that was not the case. NL MVP was I wouldn't really say it was a bold pick, but I liked it. I picked Acuna.
Well, yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? The guy got hurt.
Yeah. He got hurt. He came out this season.
He's going to be one of the odds-on favorite next year.
Easily.
No doubt about it. He's a stud.
Yeah, I just remember watching him in those first couple of weeks against the Mets, and he really looked lost at the plate. Like he couldn't. Like he was swinging and missing the pitches right down the middle. I mean, his timing was off. He was chasing. He struggled.
I'm sure he didn't spend the time off doing what was necessary, and it's a whole interesting conversation we can have. But there's two different styles of hitting. You see Freddie Freeman and Juan Soto, who can take the time off for the COVID concerns and roll out of bed and hit a certain way. Their head doesn't move. They have good two-strike approaches, different focuses. Ronald Acuna's got a lot of moving parts. It's kind of hard with no spring training for him to get that foot down and be as dynamic as he is. You saw it his rookie year. He struggled out of the gate and then just got hot down the stretch and played like Ronald Acuna we know today.
Yeah, and I think that was really the main issue is he wasn't getting his foot down. His timing was all off. But then again, he was facing like the two that he looked the worst. Granted, with the two starts that he had against the best pitcher on the planet against Jacob deGrom. So I can't really fault him too much for that, but he struggled coming out of the gate. AL, it's really not through any fault of his own with the injury to his forearm and the fact he didn't really pitch much this year other than those first two games was Ohtani. And he didn't really hit too well either. It could have been like coming out. He didn't pitch well. He got hurt again. It might have just been he just didn't have that type of confidence to go on the mound or to go out there and just do what he does, which was a shame. But he's still a guy that I think is going to be really good in his career. Mm-hmm. So let's move into end of season awards predictions, and we'll start with manager of the year. Go ahead with your National League Manager of the Year.
So I am on record saying that this is the worst roster in the MLB, and they're fighting for a playoff spot. Gabe Kapler, what he's done with the Giants, it's pretty impressive. That's a
You hate
bad
to see it.
roster, and I, I mean, I'm enjoying it because of how much negativity there was surrounding him with the Philly fans, and I love to see that. If that guy
And
gets to the playoffs and they don't with the better
rightfully
roster,
so, though.
I love that.
He was bad with the Phillies.
That's what
I
you
mean, I thought
think, or was it bad roster construction?
that's true.
I
That's
mean,
true.
he's taken a bad team to the playoffs. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, they've
now
had
they're
a
hitting.
bunch of guys that have
There
stepped
was a
up.
mess going on with their hitting.
Yeah.
I have stories that I've heard over the past couple of weeks of guys on the Phillies having to go off site to hit because they wouldn't allow people in their facility to hit. And like they told Rhys Hoskins that he shouldn't swing at anything out over the plate, anything middle out with less than 2 strikes. Like
That's just
stuff like
crazy to
that.
me.
That was just,
And
you
and
just
what's
don't tell hitters to do that.
and what's crazy is Rhys Hoskins. Now, I wanted to trade for Rhys Hoskins before he got hot, and everybody told me no, you shouldn't do it. I was gonna buy low, give up like a middle of the order prospect, and bring back a guy who is a really freaking good hitter. And I really regret not doing it because he came out and played really well in the second half of the shortened season. Now, my NL Manager of the Year is a guy who got his team through COVID, a team that had absolutely no expectations of making the playoffs and has really just shocked all of baseball. And it's Marlins manager Don Mattingly. Now, Don Mattingly is a good manager to begin with. He did well with the Dodgers, and he's done really well with the Marlins, all things considered. I mean, look at how bad we thought that team was going to be. We thought they were going to be like, I think I ranked them the third worst team in baseball coming into the year. But they've just had timely hitting. They've had solid pitching. Their bullpen's been decent. They're not a great team, but they're a team that is a little bit ahead of schedule with their rebuild, I guess. I mean, when I look at this team, they're built on pitching. I look back at that 2015 Mets team and kind of see some similarities in that the lineup wasn't great, but their pitching is carrying them. And when they brought up Sixto Sanchez, which was a great move, by the way, he has just shoved. Like he's gonna get NL Rookie of the Year votes. He has done really well. Sandy Alcantara coming back from COVID did really well. And they had a couple of – I mean, there was a stretch when they first came back after the COVID where half their team had it. They were playing an Olympic gold medal track athlete at second base.
Skater.
Skater was a skater. I thought he was track. That's how little I know about these guys. They were playing a bunch of guys who would probably be in double or triple A on other teams, and they were winning games. Like, I don't know what – there was a point where I think they started 4 straight guys who were making their major league debuts on the mound, and they all pitched well. One guy who I think really did well for that team this year was Pablo Lopez, who really came out and he pitched well. He's a guy who was never really a big strikeout guy, but he came out, he pitched really well for them. And I think we've talked about this before. I think the Marlins are one of those teams that teams aren't going to want to play in the playoffs, and it's not because they're good. It's because they have absolutely nothing to lose. So if you're going to go and play them, this is a group of guys that they're not going to be nervous. Nobody expected them to be there. So they got nothing to lose.
Plus no fans. Like it's not like they're going to Dodger Stadium.
Exactly. I mean, they're probably going to come in second place in the National League East. They're going to end up with probably the 5 seed, because I think the Cardinals are probably, unless the Cardinals keep winning, the Cardinals would be they'll either play the first wild card team or the worst division winner. So they'd either have the Cubs or the Padres. which obviously I think the Cubs would be a better matchup for them. But who knows? I don't think they'll make a run, but boy, would I love to see it. That would be a great story. That would be better story than last year's Nats, honestly.
Yeah, there's only so many good stories though.
That's true.
They run out over time. Good teams win ball games. So, but yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it was patchwork, and once they got through that, it was just like, hey, all we got to do is play 500 ball the rest of the way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they started out so good. It was just, hey, play 500 ball and we're in the playoffs. That's all we got to do, and they have. And you know, credit to them, they are ahead of schedule. It's massive.
AL Manager of the Year.
Another team that I don't really want to say they're ahead of schedule because I think they're about right where I would expect them to be at this time with their lineup, and it's Charlie Montoya with the Blue Jays. Like with an 8, they wouldn't make the playoffs in a normal year, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're right on that fringe. It's what, you know, a lot of people thought they would be coming into this year. Their pitching isn't great. They got Ryu, but that's it. So the young lineup, everybody takes a step forward. They slip in as like a 7-8 seed. It's about where they're expected to be. And, you know, Charlie Montoya's got the young boys playing well.
Yeah. I mean, if it wasn't for this guy, I would agree with you. I mean, I think the Blue Jays have been really good. I mean, losing Bo for that was a month and a half or so. With a knee injury, that really hurt him. But I mean, Kevin Biggio's had a really good year. Vlad Jr., despite the numbers, has started to come along, starting to develop into the player we all thought he was going to be. And that team's just really good. But my manager of the year in the American League is Rick Renteria from the White Sox. I mean, this is a team that hasn't made the playoffs in it might have been over 10 years, I think. But that is a team I was high on from day one. Like I had them. I think I had them 7th. I had them being the second AL wild card team in the original format. It's a really good team. I mean, Lucas Giolito took another step forward this year. You have a candidate for American League MVP in Jose Abreu, has had a career year, even better than his rookie year where he finished 4th in the MVP voting. But that's a really good team. Eloy Jimenez looks good. Louis Robert looks good. They're solid up the middle. I mean, Grandal has really been one of the bigger disappointments behind the plate, but you got to – I mean, even that hasn't been that bad.
Imagine if you're calling a great defensive catcher with your
Exactly.
pitching staff and he has 7 homers on the year on a short season, a disappointment. That's when you know you had a good year.
Exactly. I mean, you had other guys emerge. You had Dane Dunning come up and do a really good job. You had even – I hate to say it because he really wasn't that good, but he's had a couple of starts at the end of the year where he's done okay. It's Ronaldo Lopez. He's done okay near the end of the year. He's not striking out guys like you would think, but I mean, he's had a couple of solid starts at the end of the year. Dylan Cease has had a solid year. Like they're good. Gio Gonzalez
pitched really well.
And then how about the last 3 days? Garrett Crochet coming out shoving 100 miles an hour from the left side, looking like Billy Wagner out there.
He's got big league balls already.
Oh, yeah.
And he's a young guy. He looks good out there. He does.
One of our league mates called him Josh Hader 2.0, and I don't think he's that far off.
Yeah. I mean, he looks good. Yeah. His stuff plays.
Filthy slider. You know, what do you do? Rookies of the year, National League. I'll start off with a couple of honorable mentions, actually, because I think the NL Rookie of the Year is going to be probably a lot closer than people think. I'll start with a hometown honorable mention. He's not going to be a top 3, but he's a guy that nobody expected to be up with the big league team this year, especially having 6 big league pitchers with Syndergaard, Stroman, and all those guys, is David Peterson, who – very quietly has pitched pretty darn well. And he went out tonight and shoved for 7 innings against the Nationals. He had 10 strikeouts in his last start, and he comes out today, he shoves, and I got to find out what his final season ERA is, because it
He was
was
like 3.4.
yeah, something like that, but it's really good. He's had a very, very good year. I think it seems like he profiles more as a mid to back end of the rotation type guy, but on a Mets team that right now is hurting for starting pitching, he's done well. My other honorable mention is a guy that another guy I didn't really hear of before this year, and he's done a really good job setting up for Josh Hader, and that's Devin Williams from Milwaukee, and he has a really strong case to be the Rookie of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this kid, he is striking at. Let's see. Let me pull. I don't want to do him any disservice because he's been just that good this year. In 25 innings, he's 3-1. He's got 9 holds, 52 strikeouts, a 0.36 ERA, and a 0.6 WHIP. That is a very strong case. Yeah, he does.
I think
that
it's one
thing
of the best
is
in the league.
Filthy. And pitching in front of Josh Hader, you get those two back to back. That's
the Brewers
really
pull
good.
Bullpen arms out of like thin air.
Yeah.
It's
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, we have the best bullpen pitcher probably since Mariano Rivera, Josh Hader. And here's this guy. Yeah, Devin Williams, never heard of him. Yeah, no problem.
Just absolute shoves.
Oh my God.
But my Rookie of the Year is Alec Baum from the Phillies. I was early in the year, I was talking to some Phillies fans, and I was like, look, the kid's going to be good, but I don't want the Phillies to rush him. And I'm glad they didn't, because he came up in the middle of August and really played well. Played pretty much exactly the way we all expected him to. He's hitting for power. He's hitting to all fields. And I've seen him play quite a few times, and he looks like he's going to be at third base for a long time for the Phillies.
I think he's done better than I thought. The power isn't what you'd hope, but again, guess what he is? A doubles power guy right now. I mean, he's a massive dude, so you'd hope he'd have some over the fence power, but I'm going to get a shirt by the end of my life that says doubles power turns to homers power. So
you should make it.
Call
custom make and make it.
Yeah. Little Backside Groundballs logo on the back.
Yeah. I'll buy one.
For my NL Rookie of the Year, I already talked about him as a breakout guy. It's Jake Cronenworth. I mean, he's been an integral part of that Padres team, and obviously they've done big things this year, and I think he's got a long career in the big leagues ahead of him.
Yeah, we were talking before we went on here about Cronenworth, and that's part of the reason why I did not say him as an honorable mention, because I knew that he was your pick. So I knew we were going to talk about him early, and we could talk about him a lot here. American League, we all know it's going to come down to 2 guys. It's going to be between Louis Robert and Kyle Lewis, but I'm going with Kyle Lewis. I mean, not really out of nowhere, but he kind of did come out of nowhere and have himself a crazy hot start to the year. And he's really, I mean, he's not as hot as he was in the beginning of August, but he has had himself a fine rookie year, and he is relatively easily my pick for AL Rookie of the Year.
I agree. The last 2 weeks have killed Louis Robert. I mean, he was good up to that point. I mean, a couple weeks ago, he's getting MVP talk, and he's just fallen off a cliff like you would expect a high variance prospect to do. I mean, start out hot. Somebody's going to figure something out on this game. This is the big leagues. They got all the data and information you'll ever need. Probably more. They probably know more about his sleep schedule than Louis Robert knows about his sleep schedule. And so he came back down to earth, and he's been really bad. Like, the numbers on, like, the full season don't look good. Like at this point, like I think it's
Yeah.
Kyle Lewis running away with this thing. And, Kyle Lewis is an interesting case. It's proof that player development of how important player development is. Kyle Lewis was a 6th overall pick with the old Seattle Mariners regime. He was a top prospect talent right away, fell off. Well, there's been a lot of turnover in that Mariners system, and they brought in a lot of good people. I mean, you look at the young guys that they're bringing up, the Kalanick's, the Julio Rodriguez, Noel V.
It still
Martes.
hurts.
The guys that they're bringing up, the people that they have in place that are developing these talents are the same ones that got their hands on Kyle Lewis. And, well, what do we see? The most important thing for talent is player development. And this went from a guy who was a written off prospect to a rookie of the year within a year. He wasn't on anybody's top 100 prospect list coming into the year. Nobody was talking about him. But guess what? That organization put him in a position to be successful, and he's finally tapped into his power. And it's awesome to see. Good organizations do good things with talent. You see it with the Cardinals year in and year out.
Yeah, same. I mean, you say the same thing about the Rays, the Dodgers, pretty much all of those teams with young studs. I mean, that Mariners team is going to be really good for a long time.
Yeah, that outfield's stacked.
They practically stole Jared Kelenic from the Mets. That one, like I said, that still hurts a little bit. But I can't really complain this year because Cano and Diaz have both played well. But regardless, Brody should have never made that trade, but that's a conversation for another
Brody's
day.
going to be out of a job, bro. He ain't going to be much longer.
Hey, Uncle Stevie's going to be bringing Sandy Alderson back to be the president of baseball ops, so I can't complain. Are you laughing at Uncle Stevie? That is what
Sandy Alderson is the original Moneyball. Do you know that? You know?
Yeah, I remember talking about that. Like maybe
Sandy Alderson.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy.
This guy's still in baseball, bro. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, man's in his 70s. He would not. I could tell you what. I was reading an article.
Signed Billy Bean, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
To the A's.
I think I was reading an article. I think it was in the New York Post today about what Sandy Alderson could come in and do. And basically they said Sandy is not coming back to nickel and dime. He's coming back because he's going to spend money. And all indications point towards Steve Cohen basically coming in, investing a ton of money in player development and analytics, which is something the Mets should have been doing from day one.
When every team in the MLB should be doing at this point. There's no excuse anymore.
Look at the Tampa Bay Rays. They
they put all their money into player development.
Yeah. They have a tiny payroll. They have all their money in player development, and they just won the AL East. They took down the big bad Yankees.
But that begs to question, what's next?
True. That is true.
When I did the job and when I did the questionnaire with the Orioles, that was what they asked. What's next in baseball? What do you think's next? I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't really know. I'm not that creative. I have my ideas, but that's a whole podcast worth of information.
We can spend about a solid 2 hours talking about that.
But yes, that is something that, because there's no excuse, like in reality. And I'm sure the Mets have put more money than people think into player development and analytics, but there's no excuse to not be investing as much funds into that stuff as you can. I mean, because you're losing the battle right in front of your face that 29 other teams are doing. So,
yeah, and with an owner coming in who's going to be the richest owner in baseball, second richest owner in all of sports, there's no excuse to not throw money into the analytics department. And that's something that, from what we've been hearing the reports about, is something that he's going to do. And he's invested a ton of money into the analytics of his hedge fund, from what I've read, and seems like that's what he's going to do with the Mets. I'm going to start with NL Cy Young because I know we're going to get off here on a little bit of a tangent because we both had the same pick, and not spoiler alert, we both had the same pick, but we can go on about this for a while. But we'll try to keep it short considering we're running on a solid hour of this segment. And it was originally supposed to be about a half an hour segment. But if you know either one of us, we could talk about this for hours. This is just what we do. So NL Cy Young, as good a year as DeGrom has had, you got to give it to Trevor Bauer. Trevor Bauer has come out and backed up all the talk that he's had in the offseason about how he's going to just continue to get better. He's probably the smartest pitcher in baseball, probably is the smartest pitcher in baseball. And he's just shoves. Now, we've said it for Shane Bieber. The Central is not a strong hitting division, but it really doesn't matter because when you go out there and you shove and you're striking out 11 guys per 9, 12 guys per 9, it doesn't matter. These are still major league hitters. And he's pitched well against Minnesota, against the White Sox, against the Cardinals, the Cubs, these teams that are in the first and second place in those divisions. So it's hard not to pick Trevor Bauer here. I mean, you could have Corbin Burns in that conversation. Jacob DeGrom's still going to be up there. DeGrom still got one more start. So for all we know, he could go out and throw a perfect game and this could change on Sunday. But that's not going to happen. But I like Trevor Bauer. I mean, I think DeGrom will probably come in second, but it's got to be Trevor Bauer at this point.
Jacob DeGrom was I went out on a limb and picked Jacob DeGrom for NL Cy Young this year.
That's a bold prediction.
Yeah, bold prediction. But anyway, so Jacob DeGrom's got one more start. What if I told you Trevor Bauer has one more start?
He will. That is what we heard.
So funny
He's
thing.
He's going to pitch Sunday, right, on short rest?
He pitched this last outing on short rest. So he's going to go 2 straight outings on short rest.
If he goes out and shoves on Sunday, that'll
funny thing about Trevor Bauer. For years now. So he has this ring that he wears, and it tracks his vitals. So what he's found out that with his body, his peak performance strength-wise is on day 4. So on 3 days rest, his peak performance is day 4. And then he has day 5 where he throws. He's been trying to get organizations, the Indians, to let him to pitch on 3 days rest for like 3 years now. He's been trying to do it with the Reds this whole year. Well, guess what the Reds are officially letting him do?
Pitch on 3 days
Pitch on 3 days rest. And guess what he's going to go into offseason begging for? A team to give him the opportunity to pitch on 3 days rest. And I think he's going to get it. And what does that mean? He's going to pitch 45 games next year if he stays healthy. What does that do to somebody's value?
Steve Cohen.
What does that do to somebody's value?
He wants the 1-year deal.
That's wild.
Give him 1 year, $45 million, and book it. Bring him to New York. Put him in the orange and blue.
45 games. That's
if
unbelievable.
You can get DeGrom to pitch on 3 days rest like 3 or 4 times, you'll have DeGrom for 35 starts. You'll have Bauer for 40 starts. That's half your games by 2 of the best pitchers on the planet.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
I mean, he's an interesting cat, no doubt, but it'll be interesting to see if a team lets him. It's tough.
I don't know if they'd let him do it all
hurt.
the time. Like, I could see them let him go like maybe 2 out of 3
and
starts.
And what does it do to everybody
rest?
Else's days of rest? Like, how do you convince your other 4 starters that, like, hey, this guy's got to go on 3 days rest, but you guys, so you don't want to mess up everybody else's routine and things like that. So it'll be weird to see how negotiations come out. But apparently, like, that's going to be a major point in who Trevor Bauer signs with is pitching on 3 days rest. He is adamant about it.
I think it could be one of those things that it may not be able to work every time through the rotation, but if there's an off day in there somewhere where you can make it work, you make it work.
That's why I don't think he might fit. I mean, the Angels don't have money falling off trees out there, but it might work with Ohtani wanting to be on the 5 day
would
rest.
Pitch. Yeah, because Ohtani would pitch. They wanted to have him go Sundays, I think.
Sunday to Sunday. So if you had a guy like Bauer who had the versatility, obviously you got to sit down and look at your schedule and how it looks, and then rain delays sprinkled in. You'd have to know going into it, like, hey, this is how we're going to line you up, and this is how we're going to set it up with Ohtani. This is the whole deal. We're going to do it this way. It's not a perfect world, though. There's obviously going to be some, but you would have to have other pitchers on board as well.
I'm sure we could talk about that for hours, but we gotta move on here. Going to the AL.
Do we even have to say the AL? Look at Shane Bieber. Come on.
Yeah, let's just move on. Shane Bieber, it's not even close.
MVBs.
It's we already talked about him for
Yeah.
a little bit when we were going out over breakouts and everything, and I'm sure we'll probably talk about him again with AL MVP. But Shane Bieber, AL Cy Young. Let's move on. NL MVP. If you asked me this question 3 weeks ago, I'm saying Fernando Tatis without question. Now, there's an argument, and I'm not giving it to Tatis. I'm giving it to your boy Juan Soto, who missed the first 2 weeks of the season with a false positive of COVID and basically came back and absolutely raked for 8 weeks.
500 OBP.
That just doesn't – that's Barry Bonds level right there.
Yeah.
No, I can't remember the last person that had a 500 OPS other than Barry Bonds. I mean, I'm sure somebody has since then, but I can't think of any.
I think Harper did. I think Harper
Harper
might have been close. I don't fact check
look.
me. I don't know. Yeah, it's
I'd
close,
have to look.
but yeah. No, I mean, he's the best. You want me to go off on a tangent? I can talk about Juan Soto all day, but instead I'll just give my. So for NL MVP, I think both races are going to be really close.
I do too.
I really want to go Corey Seager or Mookie Betts. I love both of them. They're my guys, but I think they split votes. You know, they're naturally playoff teams without. You have Tatis and Machado who are going to split votes. Tatis is probably running away with it. Machado's been consistent all year. Tatis comes down. Machado's still hot. I think Machado has a better case today than Tatis does on a numbers level basis. And so who's the one guy that's a playoff team? You know, you have to check all the boxes. You got to go Freddie Freeman. Acuna goes down. Their pitching staff is injured. Well, guess who's still on top in the NL East? The Braves. Mm-hmm. And guess who's the constant in that lineup? Freddie Free. Every day he rakes, rolls out of bed, 330, 320, whatever he does, all he does is hit. And he's just Freddie Free, just doing what he does.
It's hard to think that he could really get better with how well he's played.
He
been
does
a
it every year.
All-star year in and year out.
Year.
And he just gets better and better every year.
There's more homers. There's more on base. There's more average every year. He just does it.
I don't know what it is, but he is a thorn in our sides. Being in the National League.
He's a thorn in everybody's side. Yeah. He's that good. Yeah. Like, he's that good that, like, if you ask any team, be like, oh, yeah, Freddie Free torches us. Like,
that's just
he's one of those guys where you just straight up go, like, oh, he does it. And everybody goes, yeah, he does it. Like, nobody knows what it is, but he does it.
He can go anywhere and hit. Like, if he left the Braves, he could go to he could go to Detroit and he'd still hit.
Oh, in that park, he'd probably hit 360.
Yeah.
Just because the field's bigger.
Exactly.
Beast.
American League, this one I think is going to be even closer than the National League. I mean, Bieber's got an argument, but I personally couldn't give it to a pitcher unless they had a Kershaw or Verlander year, which Bieber is but isn't. I think if it's a full 162, I think you might give it to him. But in only 60 games, I don't think you can. I went with Jose Abreu, who really quietly has had a career year. And nobody talks about him. That's the thing that blows my mind is his rookie year, he came in fourth in the MVP voting. He had an unbelievable year in his first year coming over from Cuba. And he's just been a steady 30 homer, 120 RBI guy for like the last 5 years. And nobody ever talks about him. And he re-signed with the White Sox in the offseason and goes out and absolutely rakes. He's second in the American League in home runs. He leads the American League in RBIs. He's up there in batting average. I mean, I think it's kind of a no-brainer to go with Abreu because he's just been that good on a team that really needed him to step up and be a leader, which he has.
Just the culture that, like, to take numbers away, most valuable, I think Jose Abreu, because like look at the culture they have in that clubhouse. You got a unique guy that could rub people the wrong way in Tim Anderson, Louis Robert, Eloy Jimenez, some Spanish-based guys, guys, and Jose Abreu is the leader in that club. He's Yohan Moncada is also Cuban, so they've really picked the right guy. And people were questioning the deal for him. Why would you go back and get him? Well, because he's almost like the father figure in that clubhouse.
Yeah.
You talk about like the culture wise, because you would mess up the culture. How's Moncada? How's Eloy? How's Louis Robert? How are those guys going to feel if you don't go front the bill for Jose Abreu when you have the money, because we're all young? We want that guy back in the clubhouse. So not to mention what he does on the field, off the field. It's just, he definitely is very important to that team, and their culture just seems to be straightened out, and I'm sure he's the focal point of it. But I went with Jose Ramirez. I have a hard time, like, if you're going first base in the MVP, like, you got to rake. And Jose Abreu has raked, but there's other guys who've done it. And Jose Ramirez, just this hot streak that he's been on is just unbelievable the last couple of weeks. And I talked about splitting votes, and Shane Bieber, I'm sure, is going to take some votes from him, but he leads the American League in WAR. He leads the MLB in WAR. And nobody's really talking about him. But Jose Ramirez has just been playing a very good baseball player for multiple years now, and it's awesome to see. I wanted to go my guy Anthony Rendon, but the 9 homers is hurt.
That's a knock on him, yeah.
Yeah, which 9 homers in a 60-game season translates to what? 20,
and thanks for him, by the way, in Dynasty.
Well, that was
I was nervous.
That was a good trade.
It was a good trade. I think it was.
I needed
it was
a catcher.
6-for-1.
I needed pitchers too.
Well, all right, let me pull up that trade and blow people's minds at how much I really gave up to get Anthony Rendon, and I think it was worth it, especially considering what has happened to the 6 guys that I traded. I'm sorry, 5 guys in the pick. So I got Rendon. I gave up Yasmani Grandal, who has struggled this year, surprisingly. I gave up Noah Syndergaard, who just had Tommy John surgery. I gave up Tariq Skubal, who has really struggled when he came up with the Tigers this year.
He's young.
He's young, yeah. There's not – I mean, it's only year one. Same with Casey Mize. Like, Casey Mize struggled too, but, I mean, it's – they're young. They probably were only up just so that they can pitch.
Yeah, so, live, meaningful at bats.
Josh Jung, who was a 10th pick last year or 13th pick?
Yeah, he was top 15
something like that.
Pick.
Really good third base prospect for the Tigers, for the Rangers. And then I gave up a first-round pick this year.
Which I flipped for Trevor Bauer. No big deal.
Who'd you get him from again?
Aldo.
Oh, God.
I had 10. He had 11. I traded down 1 and gave up Drew Waters. He gave me Trevor Bauer and gave up. Now, I have to remember, Trevor Bauer was coming off a bad year last year.
It wasn't that bad.
I mean, it was his second half with the Reds was bad. So, I mean, there was some risk involved, obviously, but not bad. I'm not complaining, especially if he goes out and starts 45 games next year.
Yeah.
I'm not going to complain.
Yeah, I mean, I think it worked out. I mean, there's an outside chance I might flip him or try to trade him in the offseason. I don't know what my direction is going to be, considering that when I lost to Andy, I was in really good shape with pitching. I had 80-plus strikeouts and I think 8 wins by my pitchers. And in any other week, that's going to win. And I lost. So, like I've said, I can't be too upset about that. But we're getting a little off topic here. Going into the postseason.
This whole episode's been off topic.
It really has. I mean, before we got on, I recorded the football portion, And this might almost have to be its own podcast, to be perfectly honest.
I think it's worthwhile.
We're over an
I think
hour.
it's pretty good.
It is.
I think there's some good information on it. To be honest with you, I think it'll be worth the listen.
I do too.
So I think it's fun. People have to understand, like, me and you also haven't talked in a couple of weeks. So like, this is true. Also our way of catching up.
We haven't I don't think we've like really talked in depth like this
we haven't
since
talked
I was down there to see
or anything. Yeah. Like, so it's been a while. So yeah, like.
Yeah. So, I mean, we were talking for probably a solid half hour before. Yeah. Now, moving ahead to the postseason picture, obviously the field's not completely set yet, but beginning of the year, I said Dodgers, Yankees in the World Series. I'm not going to go away from that, but
I'm sticking to it. Same here. I have the same World Series. I'm sticking to it. I think the Yankees are about to get real hot.
What do they just win 10 in a row?
They are getting in the pro, but I'm thinking getting healthy and
they got healthy at the right time.
At the right time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, as for the other two championship series teams, I gotta say Atlanta and how would it work out? Would it work out that the Rays wouldn't have to play the Yankees until the ACS?
Did not think about like the seeding.
I didn't either.
So if I just throw random names out and you're like, "What? How?" It just ignore me.
Because the Yankees will be the teams. 4. No, they wouldn't play them because the Rays have the set. Wait, do the Rays have the best record in the AL?
Yes.
Or is that the A's?
The White Sox are a half game off or something like that. So It's like, I think it's Rays.
So if the Rays don't play the Yankees before the ALCS, I think it's going to be the Rays.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm going to say the White Sox.
Yeah. I'm going to go. I'm thinking Rays too. I agree with that. I think they're rotation, but I'm going to go A's instead. Even though I don't like either the White Sox or the A's rotation, so I don't love it, but I'm going to go different in the NL. I'm going to go Reds. I think the Reds are playing good baseball at the right time. I was very high on them to start.
So was I.
If they stay hot and that pitching rotation comes out and does it,
I think I ranked them 9th going into the season.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like their lineup. I think their bullpen's also better than they've performed. I don't know how when you have Iglesias, who's nasty, Amir Garrett, who's nasty, Archie Bradley, who's nasty, Michael Lorenzen, who's nasty. I don't know how you give up runs.
I don't either.
Big leaguers blow my mind more and more each day.
Yeah. I mean, I am very high on the Reds. I was high on the Reds from day one. The Reds and the White Sox were my two teams that I thought were going to be really good. Mm-hmm. And I think the Reds are making that push to go past the Cardinals and possibly sneak into that second spot in the
That's a team that nobody wants to see.
Oh, no.
Reds.
You do not want to see Trevor Powers, Sonny Gray, and Louis Castillo in a 3-game series. Yep. You don't want to face them. I don't care who you have. If I'm the Dodgers, granted you can match Walker Buehler and Clayton Kershaw up, but Game 3, Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin, Julio Urias.
Yeah, there's some options.
I'm taking any of the 3 Reds guys over them. Yeah. As good as they are. But I'm taking any of the 3 Reds guys over them. I mean, Louis Castillo, I think his last 2 starts, he's absolutely dominated.
Louis Castillo's a slow starter, too. So he's getting hot right now. Like, historically speaking, Louis Castillo's always had a bad first 10 starts of the year. Always. And that's what he got this year was 10 starts. But, well, guess what? He's settling in just in time for playoffs. So, just think about that. Guys would have 20 more starts.
I know. That's crazy. Yeah. Just, like, thinking about, like, seeing DeGrom 20 more times would just be nice. And you know what the best part is? The Mets are actually scoring runs for him this year.
Yeah.
It's like it's a freaking miracle.
Don't even get me started about DeGrom. I would love to sit down and break down a tape of Jacob DeGrom and just love on him. Just love
How crazy
and
is
then
it?
we could do you know what, we could do an episode of that. Break down a tape of DeGrom and Juan Soto.
I'd love to do that.
We can just talk through out
That
there
would
to
be
pitch.
probably a 2.5-hour podcast, to be
Oh
honest.
my God. And just love on two of the best
Mm-hmm.
guys in the MLB. Just
I'd love
good
that.
for baseball. Like to have these guys. Good
But
for baseball.
isn't it crazy though how like when DeGrom first came up in 2014, he was throwing the four-seamer at 93, 94 at the knee.
He's a freak.
And he
I
was
don't know
always a
what he's
guy who
doing.
would pitch down in the zone, pitch to contact. He did a really good job hitting corners, but every year his velocity has gone up, and he's thrown, I think he threw 200-mile-per-hour fastballs all of last year. And he's throwing 200-mile-per-hour fastballs an inning right now.
Yeah.
Like
He's a
think
freak.
his average fastball velocity is like 98.5. And that's just absurd for a starting pitcher.
Yeah.
And
I just expect his arm just to
it's so
detach.
free and easy. Like
It
it just seems just so effortless. But
It
I mean,
is.
his stride is also really long, so it's probably what helps him being
Well, that
a tall
helps.
guy.
So, yeah, and to dive in slightly to the analytics. So, why extension is important. So, obviously, the high fastball is very important. So, you have spin efficiency, spin rate that play into it. Well, look at Matt Scherzer. So, and Josh Hader. They're what they call unicorns. So, they're like low arm slot guys with fastballs that play up. So why do they get so many swing and misses up in the zone? Because of the deception of a low release height that makes it seem like this ball's not supposed to defy gravity and play up in the zone. But what makes extension important is for guys who get good extension, well, the longer you get down the mound, well, what does that do? It lowers your release height more and more. So when you're able to work up in the zone, it has that deception up that you're like, why is this ball rising at you? Why are softball pitchers so hard to hit with their rise ball? Well, because it comes from such a low slot and it defies gravity and comes up across the zone rather than working on that downhill plane that everybody talks about. Like, oh, this guy has good downhill plane. So it's I mean, Jacob deGrom's awesome.
Well, yeah, he really is. But I definitely think that would be a cool episode to do. I would look forward to that in the off season when football's starting to settle down a little bit and golf is getting out. I mean, the season's almost over, really. You got one more major coming up. But that's a great off-season episode. I mean, there's plenty of those we could do. You could do breakdown DeGrom and Soto. You can do one where you talk about Trevor Bauer and just how I don't want to call him a psycho with analytics, but he kind of is. Yeah. Very unique. And he's really a student of the game in that regard. But we're going to wrap this up in a minute. But before we get into that, I want to give a really early free agency look and look at some moves that might get made. And it really kind of comes down to what's going to happen with JT Realmuto with the Phillies. I mean, they were talking extension in the original spring training, and it didn't really get anywhere. So I'm going to make a call right now and say that if Realmuto does not sign an extension with the Phillies before free agency, he's gone.
I think so too. I think so too. I just think if you're the Dodgers and the White Sox, just because you fronted money for him, like what team in the MLB doesn't get better with JT Realmuto as your catcher? How are you not, if you're trying to compete, how are you not trying to entertain JT Realmuto? I think every NL East team should be on JT Realmuto. I think every single one of them. I think every team in the MLB should be on him. I think he would be a good fit with the Nationals. I think Mets. I think the Braves. I think there's not a single team in the MLB that wouldn't be better with JT Realmuto.
Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, I couldn't even imagine him in a Dodgers uniform, what that lineup would become.
Will Smith,
they would go from being – I mean, yeah, Will Smith's a very good catcher.
I honestly think
Realmuto's still an upgrade.
Yes, no, I agree.
At least in our lifetimes.
Young and cheap with that team is loaded.
At least in our lifetimes. I said from day one, they are so far and away better than everybody else that it's not even funny. Like, I had people when I came out with the Dodgers and Yankees articles, because I had the Dodgers 1 and Yankees 2 preseason, there were people saying like, well, the Yankees should be number 1. I'm like, have you looked at the Dodgers lineup and who they're
the
putting out
Yankees
on the
with
mound?
Severino is
With
close.
Severino, it's an argument.
And a healthy Yankees lineup, it's close. I still give it to – if Gonsolin's legit, Dustin May, Julio Urias, Walker Buehler, Clayton Kershaw.
Clayton Kershaw turned back into Clayton Kershaw this
year. It's still
year.
Dodgers, but it's closer with Luis Severino healthy and right. Yes.
What's crazy, though, about like a guy like Kershaw is he had his worst ERA in a season since his rookie year, and it was 3.03 last year.
He's a freak. You don't get me on
Clayton Kershaw is
win a World
without
Series,
question.
please.
Yes, I know. Just this year, I'm begging.
I just want it.
I will go if the Dodgers win the World Series. I will say it right now. I'm wearing a Clayton Kershaw jersey on any baseball-related podcast that we do in the offseason. I have a jersey in my closet. I will wear it for every baseball podcast
then we
do.
can finally start talking about him in the air that he deserves to be.
Yes.
And it's best pitcher
up there with the Sandy Koufaxes, with the Whitey Fords and those guys as being potentially the best left-handed pitcher of all time.
Yes.
I mean, he's easily the best pitcher of this generation. As good as DeGrom has been, as good as Scherzer has been, as good as Verlander has been, they have not been Clayton Kershaw. Clayton Kershaw
not for as long as he's done it.
He has done it from 2008 through. I mean, his rookie year was okay. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. But he just absolutely went on a tear. And from like 2010 through 2016, where he won his 3 Cy Youngs, he was so much better than the next best pitcher in baseball. I don't know. Like, he is the best pitcher that I've ever seen with my own 2 eyes. And he probably will be for a long time.
I think DeGrom's more fun to watch.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
I think you can make that argument.
And again, I didn't watch, that's recency bias just through and through. I can completely admit that. But the Love Me tape on Jacob DeGrom would be a lot more fun to watch. It's just him just punching guys' tickets. But Clayton Kershaw through that stretch, I mean, he was
just unhittable.
Like, I mean, we're talking about whatever ERAs, and I mean, it was impressive. He didn't give up a homer to lefty that one whole year.
Yeah, I think that was his MVP year, right?
Yeah, it's like, okay, no homers to lefties, no big deal.
I know. And what's crazy is people forget about 2015 with him, where I think he only pitched like 170 innings, but his ERA was like 1.9.
Yeah.
And he lost the Cy Young to a guy with a 1.7 ERA, and another guy on his own team had a 1.69 ERA.
Yeah, that was a crazy year.
That was a great year for pitchers.
Yeah.
And he threw one particular pitch to Daniel Murphy in that postseason where it was down and in fastball, and Murphy just got the barrel on the bat on it somehow and kept it fair. Like, what he did that postseason, I can't even comprehend. And what's crazy is that might have been the best postseason that Kershaw had. Yeah. He pitched so well that postseason, and it was only the 2 times that Murphy took him deep that he really wasn't that good.
Mm-hmm.
But so going back to the free agency thing, I've been saying this with Real Muto since it was announced that Cohen's going to be buying the Mets. If I'm Steve Cohen, I'm going to give Sandy Alderson a blank check with JT Real Muto's name on it and say, here you go. You go call JT and you offer him whatever he wants. If he says he wants 10 years and $350 million, you give it to him. I don't care. But you go get him. I don't think he is the last piece. I mean, obviously the Mets starting pitching is suspect right now, but Cohen's got to throw the checkbook at JT. Like, if he hits free agency, he has to wear pin. He has to be in orange and blue next year. If the Mets want any chance of going anywhere, he has to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Sandy Alderson would let Cohen give him 10 years
I don't either. I mean,
to a
I was
catcher.
just throwing a number out there.
Yeah, no,
I
I know
mean,
what you're saying, but yes, I agree. They need to. If Cohen seriously's got big balls, like if he really wants to be who he's portrayed to be coming in, that would be the deal. That would be
mhm.
like, all right, this guy means business, and and like you said, I don't hate the Bauer idea. You got to see how this. It's easy to get ahead of
Mhm.
yourself and be like, oh, Cohen's going to spend, but Alderson's still a very smart, savvy baseball guy. He's not going to give too many years to a
Yeah.
catcher. That's known. He even as athletic as JT is, we have to remember how many innings he has on his legs.
Yeah.
It might be a 4-year, let's say hypothetically 150 deal might be more realistic. Let's go crazy AAV, low years, which for
Yeah.
a catcher that makes a lot more sense than the 7-year 210 or whatever that
Yeah.
you could get him for.
Give him like 5 for 200. I
Yeah,
don't really see how he can
that's
say no to
that's
that.
reasonable.
I
Yeah,
don't
I
see how
mean
he can
that's
say no to that.
unbelievable. And if the Phillies aren't willing to do it, if he hits free agency and Cohen comes in and he wants to make a statement, taking him from the Phillies would be a very good statement.
Oh yeah. And now I'm not the type of Mets fan that's going to say that Steve Cohen should just throw the checkbook at every free agent. I mean, I look at JT Realmuto, I look at Trevor Bauer, and I see two guys that will make a difference next year. But
Yeah.
as we talked about earlier, I think it would make the most sense for him to throw the most money at the analytics department, because in recent memory, the Mets prospects have not really developed that well.
Yeah.
I mean, since the big four pitchers, the best guy to come up has been Alonso, and he hasn't even been good this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you had great drafted guys who just so happened to develop into studs. Now,
Mm-hmm.
granted, Harvey fell off a cliff once he got the thoracic outlet syndrome. Matz has looked bad this year. Syndergaard's hurt, although I still think Syndergaard is a really good number 2 on a championship team.
Yeah.
And I think the Mets should consider talking extension with him simply because he's coming off an injury and you're not going to get him any cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you have DeGrom, who's been the guy. And
Yeah,
since
he's like
then,
33 throwing Honda.
exactly. And
He's not slowing down.
and you haven't really had good development. So if you go out and get Bauer and Realmuto, maybe you bring in another lesser starting pitcher. Maybe you bring Porcello back on a cheap deal. I mean, he hasn't really been that good, but he's been good enough where he could be an innings eater, where he could be a decent number 5 starter, which is perfectly fine. I mean, not even the Dodgers have a amazing 1 through 5 now. They have a really good 1 through 5, but their 5 starter, I believe, is Tony Gonsolin, and he's still a rookie. So you don't, as good as he's been, you don't really know with him. As for a team like the Nationals, their rotation's still good. I mean, you're going to have Strasburg coming back from the carpal tunnel issue. Now that scares me a little bit because you're talking pitching with the nerves in your hand, like being able to feel the ball. That scares me a little bit, especially because I'm a Strasburg owner in fantasy, which it's a little nerve-wracking, which is why I might consider trading him in the offseason. But I mean, he could still come back and shove, could be on a Cy Young level. Scherzer's going to be another year older, but even though he took a little bit of a step back this year, I still think he's one of the best pitchers in baseball.
He's tired.
Yeah, I think Patrick Corbin's the same way.
Yeah.
Anibal Sanchez too. He's been rough this year. I
He's
think
older.
the Nationals could really do a good job taking advantage of the starting pitching market. There's going to be some names out there, and they don't need to go get the flashy name. They don't necessarily need to go get a Trevor Bauer.
Mike Rizzo has a tendency to want to get the best pitcher.
I mean, you don't need to go get a Trevor Bauer. They're not a Trevor Bauer away. Now, don't get me wrong. Trevor Bauer would absolutely help the Nationals, but they aren't a Trevor Bauer away from doing anything. They need a good 4 and 5 starter to come in there and be successful. and then they need to get a couple more hitters. Now, you knew when they lost Rendon, they were going to take a step back. And Keyboom this year he hasn't really been that guy. I mean, you've seen more than I have. So, I mean, the numbers might be different than what he's actually done. So I wouldn't really more than I do there, but they need to get some pop in the lineup. They got to get a guy that can hit him 35 to 40 homers and has done it consistently. If there was a Mike Moustakas on the market, which obviously there isn't, that's the type of guy they need to go get. That's a good fit.
Yeah. I would expect that Carter Keyboom won't be a National next year.
You don't think so? You think they trade him?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Nolan Arenado maybe coming to the Nationals. They've been linked to him for a while.
That would be a great pickup for them. That would be a really good
Joey Gallo, I could see replacing Adam Eaton in right field. I don't know if he doesn't really fit Mike Rizzo's mold. Joey Gallo's my mold. So we're like, I would trade Carter Keyboom for Joey Gallo type situation. But I think that's the thump they need. They have the guys who hit for average. They need the guy who's going to you walk Juan Soto. Well, guess what? Here's a 2-run jack. 40 times a year. So we'll see. We'll see what they do. But I agree. I think their bullpen's set. For the first time as a Nats fan,
they look a lot better.
I can say Tanner Rainey's a stud. Wander Suarez is a stud. Will Harris is very good. And they got a lot of young guys that are good, pitching really well this year. So
I'm going to tell you right now, I think Tanner Rainey is their closer next year.
Well, closers are overrated anyway, so I don't care.
I think he'll be their closer.
I want him to pitch against the best hitters on the other team, whether that's the 4th inning, 6th inning, 8th inning, or 9th inning.
Hey, that's the Rays mold. That's what they've done with Nick Anderson all year.
I know.
They did it. They were doing it in the Mets series.
Are overrated.
He pitched the 8th inning against the Mets the other day. I think it was last night. Yeah, he pitched the 8th inning against the heart of the order. And then I think it was Fleming maybe that came in and got the save, but
saves are
whatever it was. Yeah. Well, we got a little off topic there, but that'll wrap up the baseball portion of the podcast. So, Trevor, as always, it was a lot of fun. Always learning something new when we have these conversations. So I look forward to having you on again in the future. And why don't you tell the listeners where they can find you on Twitter and maybe one last little quick plug about the podcast for yourself.
Yeah, so the podcast is Backside Groundballs. It's anywhere podcasts are free. Check it out. We got 18 episodes. I think they're pretty good stuff. Give us feedback. I'm at T-Power, no S, Prospects with an S, T-Power Prospects. On Twitter. Hit me with follow. I'm not active on Twitter right now. It's actually deleted off my phone for my own sanity and mental health, but I will be back hopefully soon. And that's all.
All right. Trevor, thanks a lot. And we're going to take a quick break here on Murphy's Law. But when we come back, we'll wrap up with some golf talk. U.S. Open finished up last week. We had a really cool little tournament, the Paynes Valley Cup yesterday, that we'll talk a little bit about when we come back here on Murphy's Law. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into this week's episode of Murphy's Law. If you're enjoying the show, please be sure to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a review while you're at it. It would really help the podcast grow, and I would really appreciate it. Also, be sure to check out our YouTube page where you can check out the video versions of the podcast each week. If you ever have a question or just want to talk sports, feel free to message me on Twitter at B_Murphy_MU. Now let's get back into the show. And welcome back to Murphy's Law in here in our final segment of the show. That segment with Trevor went a little bit longer than what we were expecting, but it was definitely a lot of fun. Our conversations really sometimes will go on for hours, and I'm not exaggerating. You saw that with about an hour and a half that we were talking baseball. And you know, if you stuck around this long, then I appreciate you, because that was long, but it was fun. So we're going to wrap up the show here with a little bit of golf. the U.S. Open was this past weekend. We saw Bryson DeChambeau go out and absolutely dominate on Sunday and basically stole the tournament away from Matthew Wolff. Well, Matthew Wolff kind of choked a little bit, but he's a young kid. He's 21 years old, just out of college. This is his first year on tour. And this was his first time really being in contention in a major, especially on Sunday being in the final group with the 54-hole lead, something that was probably a little new to him. So the pressure may have gotten to him a little bit. The Sunday scaries at the U.S. Open always do sometimes with the youngins. And it might not just be that. It could be the fact that the course played really difficult on Sunday. I mean, Bryson was the only guy who finished the 4 rounds in red numbers, and he won by 6 shots, which is pretty outstanding. But there were some notables that missed the cut. Tiger Woods missed the cut. Phil Mickelson, Colin Morikawa missed the cut. A few other notables, Jordan Spieth missed the cut. And it was a struggle for a lot of those guys through the first 2 days. There were some big numbers put up. There were some 80s scores put up in this tournament, quite a few of them actually, more than you're used to seeing. But that's coming back to what guys like me might shoot when they go out there and play golf. Not on that course, because I can tell you right now, if I went out and played that course, I don't know if I'm breaking 100. Now, I mean, I'm a decent golfer. Like I consider myself a decent golfer. Like I've shot in the 70s before. Like I'm a decent golfer. But if I went out there to Winged Foot and played with the U.S. Open setup, there is no chance, literally no chance if I don't hit the fairway. So I would struggle to break 100. And that just brings it back down to reality. It's designed to be the hardest major of the year, and that's exactly what it was. Last thing we'll talk about, we had the Paynes Valley Cup in Missouri. Tiger opened his first publicly open course, first Tiger design course open to the public in the United States. It was named after a former PGA Tour player, Payne Stewart, who died in a plane crash in 1999. He won 3 majors on tour, including the 1989 PGA Championship, the 91 and 99 U.S. Opens. So he won the U.S. Open just a couple of months before he passed. He came in second at the British twice in 85 and 90. And I believe he came in 8th at the Masters in one season. I can't remember off the top of my head what year that was, but he was inducted into the World Golf Hall of Fame in 2001. And it was a matchup of Tiger and Justin Thomas versus Rory McIlroy and Justin Rose. It's really a lot of fun. I saw the highlights. Unfortunately, I did not get to see the match. I wish I did, but if it was anything like Tiger versus Phil with Brady and Manning, or even the first Tiger versus Phil, it had to be funny. I would have to imagine. Just hearing the little conversations that they had in the highlights, it was funny. So I'm really hoping that I can find a full-length version of that so that I can sit down and watch it, and hopefully you can too. If I find it, I'll throw it into the description of one of the podcasts, and I will let you all go see it for yourselves. Now, that's going to wrap up the show for this week. It was a lot of fun, a lot longer than I expected, but when you're having fun, time flies, and that's something you kind of have to live by. But right now, I'm planning on either going with Fridays or Saturdays to release the podcast each week. We may go to 2 podcasts a week in the future, but for now, we're going to stick with 1. And we're going to kind of see how things shake up with baseball season, with football season. The golf season is nearing a close, so we may talk a little bit more golf in the future, especially with the Masters coming up in November. So we'll talk some golf going up then. We're probably going to be looking at Friday afternoons, as I said. That's probably, I think, when I'm going to go with either Friday afternoons or Saturdays. Today is Friday, obviously, so this is how you'll see it and how you'll hear it. So before we go, make sure you check us out on any platform you use to listen to podcasts, whether it be Apple Music, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and check us out on YouTube. The channel is live. It is Murphy's Law on YouTube, so be sure to check that out to see the video versions of the podcast. I thank Trevor once again for coming on the podcast and really having one of our classic baseball conversations that went far longer than we ever expected. But that'll do it for this episode, and we will see you next week.